be a man and handle things accordingly. Men don't cry like a girl. I really feel like talking to someone, but I'm not too sure how people are going to react to it. Why would you babysit your child? Where's your wife? Isn't she supposed to do that? Come on, you're a man and getting all this emotional. I mean, isn't it a little odd for you? I'm sure all of you have heard these statements often. Being a man, I'm sure you relate to it. Hi, I'm Urvashi Bisht, head psychologist at Hey, and today we are here to talk a little about men's mental health, or I should say, know a perspective from a man himself of what it means to them. Men are always expected to not be vulnerable or express themselves. When it comes to mental health, research suggests that men everywhere find it difficult to open up about mental health. In fact, they are more vulnerable than women at times. We have with us today Ankit, CEO at Hey, a Singapore based mental health organization, here to debunk myths about men's mental health. Today, we are here to deconstruct notions around men's mental health in specific. The reason being, many men suffer in silence due to a culturally prescribed notion of masculinity that prevents men from seeking the help they may desperately need, be it men don't cry or that they are told to man up while experiencing something overwhelming. Hey Ankit, happy to be speaking with you on something as relevant as men's mental health. Welcome to the space.
Good. Hey, Urvashi, how are you?
All good. How are you doing, Ankit?
Doing well. Thanks for the opportunity.
I'm so glad. I think beyond connecting with each other as colleagues, today we are being an interviewer and interviewee equation. How do you feel about that?
I've done this in the past with a couple of other things that we've been doing as an organization.
Yes.
So yeah, feels okay. Happy to be here.
So glad that you could take out time for this because no better person to have this interaction with about men's mental health. You yourself, who's founded an organization that is a mental health startup, right?
Yes.
So maybe I'll shoot my questions onto you and you can respond basis your personal experiences and probably your opinions and beliefs about the same. Yeah?
For sure. Let's go.
All right. So I'll ask the first question, Ankit. So I'm sure the journey of building up a mental health startup, being a man, must have been challenging, but more than that, alarming, right? So what has your journey been like? Can you brief us about that?
The journey has been, if I were to put it in one word, it's been extremely enriching and educating for me personally. Yeah. Considering that I'm not from the domain of mental health. Before I began Hey, the entire experience and the knowledge that I have gained just by being in the presence of people like yourself, extremely people like the psychologists and the therapists and the coaches that I've been working with all this while for the last 1 year. It's been an extremely enriching experience. I don't think there is a day goes by where I'm not. I think when you mentioned about debunking, I don't think there is any day that goes by where I'm not debunking or self-learning out of all the interactions that I'm doing. So it's been extremely enriching from that perspective and very growth. It's led to my own personal growth. I believe as a founder.
It's so nice to read about your growth on your LinkedIn that you keep posting very recently or very frequently about what or any conversation and beliefs about mental health that you experience personally. So I think that's something that you're very open with.
Yeah, very. I think I've kind of made it a point that my experiences I share, which are more personal. I keep sharing a lot about parenting and the things that I'm learning. Kind of trying to teach my kid, or I would say trying to teach myself how to be a better parent. To begin with, I'm also constantly learning about how to be a better leader. I think it's a work in progress. That I try to make that happen. So yeah, I think it kind of adds value to people around me when they listen, and I think it also makes it a little bit easy for people to kind of be vulnerable and to accept that there can be challenges and these challenges can be overcome. I think that's really the point of sharing all of it in the first place.
Great, great. So if I ask you, Ankit, were you looked at differently for setting up a startup that encourages men or women to talk, considering men are not encouraged to do so, basis the socialization or the concept out there?
I wouldn't say I was looked at differently, or let me say that I don't think I ever gave that kind of, that kind of an importance to, to people outside
Right.
who may want to look at it differently. I think from the very beginning I knew that I'm doing the right thing, something that I truly believed in. So for me, it was never an outward, whether people will think of it differently or not.
Right.
I can say from my, from a very personal standpoint, I think my wife was a bit taken aback when I started, this space, because inherently I'm a very emotional person, and she believed that the field that I'm getting into is going to impact me emotionally a lot more than perhaps somebody else. So I think I've been able to kind of uh, at some level also detach myself to all the stuff that we got into. Like I was doing in the initial chats, when things were getting set up, I was literally speaking to the users, from day one. And some of these conversations were extremely difficult conversations. So, they did have an impact initially, but I tried to kind of take a step back and look at it a little bit more holistically on how we can add value. So I don't think I personally ever kind of looked at others on how they were looking at me, whether I'm doing the right thing. But over a period of time, I knew myself that this is the right thing to do. This is an area that I really cherish. It's been my personal experience, so wanted to do it the way I want to do it.
It's quite interesting to know, as you mentioned, that you were involved by directly interacting with the users, even though you're the one who's, heading the organization. So,
Yeah.
so you wanted to be very involved with knowing how this is working at the smallest of the level to how you're heading the organization on your end.
Right. It was important, I would say, because I'm very openly, I'm not from the mental health domain. Through my education, through my background, I'm not. A lot of the initial work that we did was really on developing the concept. I wanted to myself get convinced that what I'm doing is the right thing to do, and that it is adding value. Because there is no dearth of really great products out there.
Right.
There are a lot of mental health applications that exist. So we wanted to kind of challenge that and also be able to be, let's say 10x better than what's out there, and to really make an impact, from that perspective. So I think in the early days, having those conversations with the users gave us a lot of confidence, gave me a lot of confidence that if you create the right space, if you give them the right modes of communication, I think people do open up. They break through the stigma and the taboo that people think that exist. There are ways to overcome those. So that was really why I invested so much of time initially in this space.
I completely, I think, understand and agree with it, because while working with you in the team, even though you're not from the field, but I've seen you've always been very open to learn from each team member about the field or how that goes around. And I think that really helps you to get very interactive with the team and put things in place depending on the requirement. So that's something that I completely agree with, that how open you are to the idea and learning from every team member who's from the field and practicing maybe in the field.
Totally. I'm actually learning and I'm implementing it on myself on a consistent basis. That's been, that's what I said in the beginning, that it's been so enriching, and it's been, personally, I've grown so much at my own level because of all of these interactions. So yeah.
Great, great. So going further, as a man, have you had moments where you would have wanted to voice out your emotions and you weren't expected to, so you didn't, and it took a toll over you, so you held yourself back?
I yes, definitely. I think I may want to kind of just um, relate it to really the really the beginning of Hey. In my own professional struggles that I went through, had a huge impact on me, both personally and professionally, right? So I think it's a myth that work and personal life don't intermix. I think your personal life, you spend so much of your time at work, it has a big impact on you personally also, right? And it kind of really defines you as an individual, how you will be outside of the work hours. And I think I had a disastrous time that led to almost like a breakdown for me personally. These were more, I mean, we do say that it's to man up, and you don't kind of showcase your emotions so much. You kind of keep it within yourself. And that was really the time when I was kind of going through a lot, and I just couldn't open up enough, because we had made this very big decision of shifting from India to Singapore. And to be breaking down so early after that, after taking that big decision, was not something that I think I mentally was very ready with, right? So I kind of held everything within myself. I don't think I shared it with my friends. I didn't share it with my wife. I think that was really a time that really shook me. And that was, in many ways, that was really the starting point of where we are today. But a really good thing that came out was that I think I made an attempt to take help. I got a coach for myself, and I literally saw huge shift in how I used to perceive things, and how open I could be, and how much help there is available out there. Right, just to kind of there is just a lot of help available out there if you are seeking if you are seeking out. So yeah, I mean, that was really a very bad time to a very good time, I would say, that I transitioned to.
All right, great. I think that was something very personal, but thank you for opening about it and sharing it with the viewers or the listeners. I would want to ask another question about what do you see as the biggest barrier towards men's mental health? Like, why do you think they hesitate in talking about it? You shared something briefly about your personal experience, but in general,
Right,
why do you think it
right.
acts as a barrier, or they hesitate in opening up?
A lot of it has to do with how we are brought up. And I think this is a very general statement. I think it applies to both the genders, men and women both. How we are brought up defines, what kind of choices we'll make. How open up are we going to be with our emotions? How accepting are we going to be about our emotions? In case of men specifically, coming out strong, not crying, don't cry, you're a man or you're a boy. I think there is just a lot of suppression of emotion that happens, maybe with men a lot more than women. And that's why you see, as men grow up and become men and, become boys, this suppression of emotion comes out in different ways, right? Sometimes it comes out as aggression, sometimes it just stays within and people become introverted because it needs an outlet somewhere. It's just that it's been suppressed for a very, very long, period of time. Um, and I think that's really, in many ways, the reasons that men do not take help. Right, they suppress their emotions, and I would say in many ways not be themselves, right, in what they want to be, essentially. And I think if I look up to some of the men that I admire the most now, are the ones who've actually just accepted their emotions amazingly well. They've just been true to themselves, and it's made them grow. And I think that is one thing that I may just put out there to the listeners. Any person that you are looking up to in the true sense, if you just really look at what they do and how they do, you'll know that these people have really they are really in touch with what they want to be and in touch with their emotions, right? And that's made them who they are at that stage. So yeah, so I think that's really what I'd like to say on this.
That would be, I think, an excellent take back from the conversation. I would say that, to be productive also, it's very important, or probably to achieve things in life, it's very important for you to be in touch with your emotions and to be able to
Right.
make sense of it. That's a great learning that, even though you're not from the field, but you're coming out from your personal experience of overcoming mental health issues. So I think
Right.
that really helps. All
Right.
right. So, is there enough being done about men's mental health? What do you think from your end? Even though you have started a great initiative of setting up this startup, but do you
Right.
think in general there's been done enough to address specifically men's mental health?
There's definitely more talk about it now. If I look around me in the startup space and in the kind of solutions that there are available,
Yeah.
there are a lot of platforms who are addressing men's mental health very very specifically, right? They're creating the right, I think, creating the right noise, creating the right, I would say, solutions that may address men's mental health very very specifically. I see a lot of groups coming up, a lot of support groups that actually address mental health of men. They talk about men a lot more. Um, in terms of the overall noise around this space,
Mhm.
I see a lot being talked about where men are asked to be vulnerable. Men are expected to just accept their emotions a lot more. So there's definitely more noise around this space. Whatever globally things have been happening, I think there is a constant, I think, comparison of decisions taken that are very high on aggression, very, I would say, men hormone led decision that are taken in the not true sense, and there is a constant comparison on how a more balanced approach or a more feminine approach could have been. When it comes to decision making or when it comes to leadership in general, there is this constant comparison, and I think it sends out the right signals to men to kind of just take a step back and think more holistically and in a more balanced way in many ways. At Hey specifically, we have not really, I think, set out to just say that we are women oriented or we are any gender specific in terms of the solution that we provide. But it's extremely heartening to see that men actually use us a lot more. In terms of the demographics, men use Hey so much more compared to any other platform, which is out there. And we never set out to kind of achieve that objective, but it's happened. And I think when I look back, I can say that the kind of space that we really built up, the way the product really works. Considering all the helpers are females, it's very counterintuitive in all ways that there is a female there, helpers mostly are females, and still men are using it a lot more. But I think it just speaks volume about that if you build the product the right way, in the most optimum way, people will come out and they will share, they will share what they're going through if you give them the right opportunity or the right mode of communication. So yeah.
Yeah, surely. I think when the right resources are available, whoever needs it will be able to access it or avail it. That's the
Right.
idea. And I think even
Right.
in CAPE, the aim is more to make it more inclusive. I think even in the
Yeah.
expert space, having an option of, including pronouns of the experts. So I think making a
Absolutely.
space more inclusive automatically includes all the population that would need it, and we don't
Exactly.
exclude anyone, but surely we don't specifically aim at targeting any gender. But I think the
Right.
aspect that we are more inclusive of every population and we want to be more respectful about that fact, I think itself
Right.
just puts it out there for people whoever needs it and are not resistant or hesitant in reaching out for help, as you mentioned in the helper space also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, end of the day, we are also, as of now, a free available app, with its
Right.
chat-based base. Despite the fact that it is the way it is, there have been instances where, the platform have been abused, and, there are men who have come in with very different objectives. But I would like, if I were to just put them in perspective of percentages, there are a minuscule percentage of people in general. Like if I were to kind of look at the overall people who've been held with A at this stage. So I think creating the right, like you said, an inclusive product, inclusive space, and building it the right way. I think people use it also the right way, and they get benefited out of it as well. So I think that's the right approach, probably without really being very gender specific, in that sense. Yeah.
Right. But it was interesting to know that there are a lot of setups that are aiming to, specifically address a gender's concern. I think each can have their own approach to kind of tackle the concern that's out there. At the end of the day, all of us are sharing the same mission of making mental health truly accessible, right? So as long as that's happening.
Absolutely. I mean, we are so nascent in the work that we are doing, like all of us, like all the our competition put together. I absolutely do not consider, all of these as competition. I mean, there is so little that's being done, and there is so much to do that, everybody is kind of, just adding value in their own spaces, to this overall mission. So, yeah.
Yes. All right. Going further, I would want to know from you, what have been your coping mechanism to deal with your own personal and work life issues? So probably a little personal question, maybe too intrusive. You can choose to draw the line and share with us. So what is your coping mechanism?
It's completely all right. So more recently or in the past? More recently. My coping mechanism.
I think coping mechanism, we try to have it consistently in our life, but depending on situations, we modify it, we make changes. Right. So you can share something recent also with your experiences of working with the team, or this very hectic setup where you're constantly involved, working with a large team.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think one of the few good things that I have done in over the last 1 year, 1.5 year, I think has been to really prioritize what matters to me. That's been, one big achievement, personal achievement that I can say. What that means is I now know that, there is my work, hey, there is my family, and there are a few other things that are extremely important for me, and rest everything is all noise. So now with that, with that thought, anything which I do in this space becomes my coping mechanism to de-stress myself. I also have kind of given myself a lot of importance, which I never used to give before, I would say. And I know that I am important for myself in some ways, right? Not to say I'm like, I'm not getting into that arrogance zone, but I know my emotions are important, and I don't let anybody devalue what I feel on a day-to-day basis, right? So I've created this space for myself where if I'm investing my time in any of these spaces, I'm extremely happy. It's kind of like my coping mechanism. So, outside of work, I'm trying to be a better parent. I'm trying to spend time with my wife, or, I'm spending a few moments with few other important people in my life. That becomes my coping mechanism. I mean, I say I talk a lot about parenting because I'm constantly trying to learn that space. I feel that every parent has to learn to be a better parent. But that just that growth that I see in myself in learning small things, and I've got assistance. I take inputs from a lot of people around me in that space. A lot of good people, qualified people, and the growth that I see, and how that further impacts my kid in a positive way, that becomes my coping mechanism. You know what, that I'm learning, and this is impacting somebody positively, which happens to be my kid. So I think these are small coping mechanisms that I have. I spend a lot of time in the night, alone, by myself. It's an extremely quiet time when there's nobody around, and I just love that time for myself, the silence that I have around me. So that becomes my coping mechanism to just shut down, for the rest of the, before going to bed, just shutting down completely. So yeah, I mean, these are some of the few, I think, coping mechanisms that have really worked for me. Starting with prioritizing what is extremely important for me.
Great to know, Ankit, that a lot of strategies that you use personally are some of them that we suggest as mental health professionals to clients for de-stressing themselves. So I think you're
Okay.
making the most of the activities and all the products that we have in our space personally also.
It's happened naturally though, for
Great,
me.
great. Excellent. All right. So how do you think society can be more accepting of men's mental health?
Hmm.
What
That's
can
a
they
that's
do
a
from
good.
their end?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's a very loaded question. I look around and I just see so much. There is a lot of right noise, but there is so much of wrong things that are still being taught, right around us. Like, I'm constantly observing, right, like I recently observed some mom asking her kid to not cry, and I heard all of that, and it just made me a little bit sad that we're still doing all of these things all over again. um, I think there needs to be a lot of education for sure.
Mhm.
There needs to be a lot, a lot said consistently. I think consistency is very important. One thing, considering I'm in Singapore, I think one thing that I really appreciate is that on a very consistent basis, there is some talk on mental health going on in some of the leading national newspapers here, which I read upon, and that I think sets the right tone for the population as a whole. That there is mental health is a thing, and it needs to be talked about, and it needs to be consistently talked about to give it front and center importance, right? And when national dailies talk about it, then it becomes a talk of the society as a whole, and that everybody is kind of paying attention to mental health in the right way, right? So there is not just hey talking about it, or some of our other folks talking about it. It is society. Like, newspapers are a reflection of what the society is doing in many ways. So I think if that becomes a process that becomes consistent, that there is a mirror that is being shown to everyone, that in a good way, right? This is what can be done. This is what can be done. This is how it impacted well, etc. I think that is a very good step in that direction. I think society can do that, or demand that from people. Um, a lot of us, people in this field, I think need to consistently make the right noise, or need to consistently make the right efforts to talk about it in a way like we are talking about it today.
Yeah.
We need more of these. We need more of these happening. Considering that we work with organizations, I think organizations accepting of mental health challenges, and accepting burnouts, and letting people give their time,
Yeah.
give them off times, letting men, creating that space for men to be vulnerable, and to accept non-alpha men as also men,
Mm.
and not really the more extroverted men as the men who can lead. I think basing it more on non-temperamental or non such areas. I think that also sets the right tone
Right.
for organization, for men in general. That this is a space that I feel comfortable, because I don't need to shout. I don't need to just be something that I'm not, and I'm still accepted. And this is where I can grow. This is how I can see myself. So I think all of those additive things have to be done. Um, I say again, a lot has to be done in the parenting space as well, because that's really the nurturing grounds of how men become men, eventually, and how accepting they are of their emotions. So I think a lot has to be done there, or at the grassroots level, in schools and colleges as well. We're talking the right way. So there is a lot to be done, I think. But yeah, I mean, these are some of the things that are that can really impact in a big way, which comes to mind.
All right, great. Quite interesting and wonderful points that you put across, some things new that I am also hearing. So that's great that, in Singapore at least, that how in newspaper and other examples that you gave, I think these are great ways to put it across, or probably set the tone for the right conversation, or someone to just read out an article and have a discussion amongst themselves. So these are good initiative that are already in place. Going further, some other things that I'd like you to share with me is how open are you about consulting a mental health professional? Does it ever come onto your ego that being a man, I need to seek out help? So you mentioned something about, reaching out to a coach for some sort of guidance or professional guidance. Have you ever reached out to a mental health professional specifically? I am referring to a psychologist or a therapist or a counselor here. And do you think that being a man, it was a little difficult or for you to ask yourself or reach out for that kind of help or even thought about it?
So, honestly speaking, have I seen a therapist? No, at this stage. Do I feel the need at this stage? Maybe not. Did I feel the need of getting guidance? I did, and that's what I did. I, went out to a coach and took help. I do take help in the space of parenting, like I mentioned. But I would still say it's more coaching and less therapy. If you do not need a therapist, but you still need some guidance, that's possible. And these are things which still play on your mind. Like it used to play on my mind. Getting stuck, not being able to move forward with my kid, is plays on me mentally. But do I need a therapist for it, or are there coaches or somebody else who's available for guidance? Helpers themselves, by the way. Right. So getting that help is important, and it can be in any form. Now, I think coming to the point of was therapy ever a no-go zone for me ever? I think that was never the case. Right, for me, that I will not ever take therapy. I never had that point of view, I think, personally. Yeah, I never had that point of view, like that if I need help and somebody is there for help, I will not take it just because that's a therapist. But I think a point here is that when we are talking about mental health, there are various facets of mental health, and there are various ways in which people can take help, right? And not everything needs to be, not everything needs a therapist, but there are a lot of places that do need therapy. And in those times, it's kind of very okay. Like, you don't think about, like, I find this very odd because I'm in this space now, but you don't ever think twice about going to a doctor. If you're not keeping well, then why would you think twice about going to a therapist? It's something mentally which does not compute in my brain. Like, why would you not do that if there is help available? But it's a real challenge. I've seen that, building up Hey, that people develop a lot of cold feet when it finally comes to turning up for the appointment. We are taking it up as a challenge in how we can break ice with these people, get them comfortable in the idea of sharing. I do think it's a challenge that needs to be solved for. Right, when more people take help, I think they become better, and it's not just good for them; it's good for people around them also, that they are better. So we are kind of, I think I personally take it as a challenge on how can I get every individual, to kind of really take help, right? Not get stuck.
Okay. Taking all of this into consideration, what is that one message or one thing that every man hearing you should take back from this conversation?
Okay, it's very ironic. I got asked this question a couple of weeks back by one of our colleagues. Happened to be a man, obviously. I think the one thing that I would say to everybody, to all the men out there, is to be in touch with your emotions and be true to them. I have spoken about this on LinkedIn as well. But I think a lot of what we do, which we don't like, or where we go out of our way and we don't feel good about it, end of the day, all happens when we are not true to the emotions that we have, and we suppress them with, suppress them and try to be something we are not. We try to be, we try to be friends with people who we should not be friends with, or people who let you down. We try to be somebody that who wants to emulate somebody in the workspace that we are not, and that never turns out well because people know who you are, etc. So I think it all stems from the need to fit in many ways, where you may not fit in because you're just not that person, right? You work differently, you are different, like all of us are different. So I think it's a little foolish to try to be somebody else, and I was in that zone many years back. Very openly, I can say that I had a lot of my own challenges where I tried to fit in many in many spaces where I was just not me. I was not happy trying to fit that in, but I still still went out there to try to fit in, all because I just suppressed what I was truly feeling. So I think that's one thing that really, I think it can work for all genders. It's not very specific to men, but I think it happens a lot with men because we want to do men or masculine or manly things,
Right.
which is actually never required. So so I think that's going to be my message. If it's only one message that I want to give, just to be true to your emotions always.
All right. I think sounds like a great note for us to wrap up our today's conversation on. Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Ankit, again for taking our time for this. And yes, aiming to take this mission further for this mental health conversation. Let's take this as an initiative and starting point for it to go further as an organization.
Absolutely.
I think as mental health professions of being in the field, whatever contribution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks so much.